We are talking about inflation tonight with Dr. Hannah Stolze from Lipscomb University. I want to get right back to the phone lines here. We have Jacob on the line. Jacob, thanks for being part of the show tonight. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. I actually wanted to sort of maybe move a bit away from inflation here and ask a lot of companies, in past years, a lot of organizations are trying to be more sustainable and ethical in their supply chain practices. And I was sort of wondering what your thoughts are on how they might or might not have to sort of make concessions to those sustainable and ethical practices as they're trying to meet the, shocking increase in demand from their respective customers.
Yeah, great question. Thank you, Jacob. I'm going to hang up so you can listen to your TV for the answer, okay? Thanks for calling in tonight.
Thank you.
That's a great question, Dr. Stolze.
That is a great question. So there's both, kind of low-hanging fruit in terms of the challenges that companies face and opportunities for companies to overcome this. I think if you remember back in, 2008, when we were starting to see a lot of environmental initiatives come through, and everybody said, oh, well, it's only driven by, policy. Surely it's going to cost companies too much money. It's going to go away. And we actually have found that as companies have implemented environmental policies, turning off trucks so that they're not, running, idling it when they sit at warehouses and stuff, actually started saving companies money. And so we haven't seen necessarily that the sustainability initiatives across the board have cost companies more. Now, where the challenge comes in for the COVID moments is that COVID exposed a lot of brokenness in supply chains, like food deserts in cities, and where it's really expensive to deliver products that are, fresh products, fresh produce and things like that. And so the kind of saving grace, I think, in all of this is that where we're probably going to see some big wage increases are in some of the frontline jobs, like warehouse workers, like frontline, kind of jobs, truck drivers, those jobs, now companies are really competing for workers. And so I think, if the unethical things are to do with labor, I think COVID is going to push wages up. If the unethical or, the challenges or, maybe they are ethical or the sustainability initiatives that we think go away when there's a recession or profit margins get squeezed, actually companies that are doing it efficiently and effectively, it helps their bottom line. So I don't think that sustainability initiatives will get sacrificed in this season. They certainly didn't get sacrificed in the 2008 recession, and I don't think that they'll get sacrificed in this space either. I think companies actually have more visibility that if they do move towards unethical or make cost-saving choices that hurt their customer, their employers, it actually hurts their brand more today than it would have 10 years ago anyway.
Certainly makes sense. Let's talk about, as we look ahead and managing this time that we're in with the cost of inflation and shortages, what would be your advice to consumers when it comes to how to plan their budgets in the next couple of months?
Yeah, this is a really great question. As you think about how inflation has hit different products, and inflation really focuses on, your everyday purchases, fuel, food, housing, gas, and those sorts of things. Those are going to be the biggest hit. And we've seen the automotive industry be the biggest hit across the board, right? Both new cars and used cars. I think used cars have gone up the most of any product in all of the indices. And so, when you think about budgeting for the next year, hopefully you're in a position where your wages are going to go up. That is one of the things we saw 40 years ago. It was one of the biggest wage hikes in the U.S. history. Wages did go up after that, and they've been pretty flat. So hopefully wages go up. But as you think about planning, your budget, food hopefully will stabilize. So plan for your food budget, plan for it to cost you a little bit more. We haven't seen huge increases, but we have seen incremental increases in healthcare. So healthcare prices may not skyrocket, but it is going to cost you a little bit more. So I think, and then also, balancing out, fortunately, Q2, Q3, especially living in Nashville, it gets warmer. Hopefully your energy costs will go down just because of seasonality. So as you're thinking about your budget over the year, you have some time before winter comes again. I guess we're not quite out of it, but I wouldn't expect, we've seen the peak, hopefully in October. And so I wouldn't expect prices to incrementally leap again, but maybe plan your budgeting for, hopefully your wages go up, but I wouldn't plan on, I would expect for items to cost a little bit more across the board. And so focus in on those base items that you need for your housing and your food, and maybe wait to buy a car for a few months.
Yeah. hopefully you can do that. What can consumers do differently overall? I mean, hopefully we don't have another pandemic around the corner. Maybe, hopefully for all of us, this is a once in a lifetime experience. But overall, we've certainly seen the psychology of shoppers over the past 2 years, which has been very enlightening. But what can we do differently when we're in the grocery store, when we're leading our daily lives?
Yeah, panic buying does really weird things to the global supply chain. We call it bullwhip effect, if you want like academic term, like not the really weird thing term, but and so when consumers go out and we buy, 6 months worth of toilet paper in one day, right? Maybe that happened, right?
Right.
And so when that happens, it actually signals upstream in the supply chain, oh my goodness, our consumers using 6 times more toilet paper. And so it doesn't just indicate initially that there's this huge demand spike that is short term. It actually could indicate a huge spike in consumption needs, which is different than buying, if that makes sense. So
yes.
We all went out and bought tons of toilet paper, and then there was no toilet paper available, which created a shortage. But it didn't mean that we were actually using more toilet paper.
Mm-hmm.
We were just buying it in bulk. And so that creates like a ripple effect. And it was really interesting. Actually, I know of factories that were shut down because they couldn't get enough toilet paper in their bathrooms for their workers to come into work. And so we don't think about the ripple effect. I think I'm just going and getting 6 months of toilet paper because I went, for my kids and my dog. Not my dog, but, my family. And meanwhile, it means that there's not that product available for others.
Right.
And so I do think that we need a little bit more others orientation than maybe we've needed ever, in my lifetime anyway. It's when we think about our buying habits, going out and panic buying, you might have your stockpile, but it definitely has an impact on the economy.
Yeah, that really does put it in perspective. When a warehouse has to shut down, it just creates another shortage that we weren't considering. We have 1 minute left, and I think it's worth explaining again that inflation and what we are seeing is really cyclical, because I think that gives us hope. So I'm gonna let you take us out on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Inflation is definitely part of the business cycle. We've seen flat wages. We've had a very efficient global supply chain for the last 20 years. And we're starting to see some of the, the shortages that were created by COVID. We're coming out of those. It is, we would like to look at it and say, we come out of it, the economy comes back, wages go up. We know that things cost more today than they did in the 1970s, right? If you look at the price of gas, when you used to pay like $0.25 for a gallon of gas. But wages have gone up since the 1970s too. So it is scary when prices go up, but we have seen a trend throughout history, even with those cycles and the economic cycles of, fluctuations of prosperity, and then, recessions are pulling back on spending. It bounces back, and as long as wage increases keep up, we'll be okay. And as we come out of COVID, we're going to see more product on the shelf, which will help. And it is concerning. It's interesting. It's a 40-year high. It's definitely worth talking about. But history shows that we come through it and we can come out of it if the economy bounces back quickly.
And I'm going to leave it at that. Dr. Stolze, thank you for being our guest tonight. It's been great.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. We'll be right back.